What happens when you open an envelope on national television, and the truth inside changes everything you thought you knew about your family? Stop the tape. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a knife. His hand was raised, the old leather diary trembling slightly in his grip. The audience went completely silent. Sarah Thompson, sitting in the guest chair, had gone pale. This was no longer just another episode. What was written in that diary would shatter a 40-year silence, and reunite a family that never knew it was broken. 24 hours earlier, Sarah had walked into the Dr. Phil studios with a simple question. How do I find my birth mother? She was 52 years old, adopted as an infant, and had spent the last decade searching for answers. The producers thought it would be a straightforward reunion story. They had no idea what they were about to uncover. Dr. Phil began the show as he always did, direct, focused, empathetic but unflinching. Sarah, tell me why you're here today. Sarah's voice was steady at first. I was adopted in 1972. I've always known I was adopted, and my adoptive parents were wonderful. But after they passed away, I found some papers in their attic. And one line in those papers changed everything. She pulled out a faded document. Her hands shook as she read aloud. Birth mother, Margaret and Collins. Note, patient expressed deep remorse about separation from first daughter. First daughter. Not only daughter. First. The audience stirred. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his expression shifting from professional curiosity to something deeper. You're telling me you have a biological sister? I think so, Sarah whispered. But I have no idea where she is. I don't even know if she knows I exist. Dr. Phil turned to his producers off camera. Did we follow up on this? A producer nodded from the wings. Dr. Phil, we found something. But you need to see it yourself. What happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil stood up, breaking his usual on-camera protocol. Sarah, I'm going to be honest with you. When my team started looking into your case, we found more than we expected. We found your birth mother, Margaret. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Margaret passed away 3 years ago. Dr. Phil continued gently. I'm so sorry. But before she died, she left something behind. And it's about to answer every question you've ever had. A production assistant walked onto the stage carrying a wooden box. Inside was an old diary, its leather cover worn and cracked with age. Dr. Phil opened it carefully. Margaret kept a journal for 40 years. And in here, she wrote about both of her daughters. She wrote about you, Sarah. And she wrote about your sister. The studio went completely silent. Your sister's name is Claire, Dr. Phil said softly. And Sarah, she's been looking for you too. Sarah's composure shattered. Sobs racked her body as the full weight of the revelation hit her. She had a sister. A sister who knew she existed. A sister who had been searching. Where is she? Sarah managed to ask between tears. Dr. Phil smiled, and for a moment, his own eyes glistened. She's here. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. From the wings, a woman stepped onto the stage. She looked remarkably like Sarah, same eyes, same cheekbones, same way of holding her shoulders. Claire was 54 years old, 2 years older than Sarah. She had been backstage the entire time, watching on a monitor, waiting for this moment. The two sisters locked eyes across the stage. Neither moved at first, as if afraid that any motion would shatter the fragile reality of the moment. Then Claire took a step forward. Then another. Sarah stood up from her chair. They met in the center of the stage and collapsed into each other's arms. The audience erupted. People were standing, crying, applauding. But the two sisters didn't hear any of it. They were holding each other like they were afraid to let go, decades of separation dissolving in seconds. Dr. Phil stepped back, giving them space. This was their moment. The cameras kept rolling, but he didn't speak. He just watched, his professional facade giving way to genuine emotion. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. After several minutes, the sisters finally pulled apart, though they kept holding hands. Dr. Phil gently guided them to sit down together. Claire was crying so hard she could barely speak. "I've been looking for you for 30 years. Claire finally managed. "Mom told me about you before she died. She made me promise to find you. She wanted us to know each other. Why didn't she keep us together?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. "Why did she give me up?" Dr. Phil opened the diary again. "She explained it all in here. And if you're ready, I'd like to read some of it to you." Both sisters nodded. Dr. Phil's voice was gentle as he read. January 15th, 1972. "I held my second baby girl today. She's perfect. She has Claire's eyes. But I can't keep her. I'm barely surviving with one child. I'm 17 years old. I have no money, no family support. Giving her up is the hardest thing I'll ever do, but I know it's the only way she'll have a real life. I named her Sarah before I let her go. Someday, I pray my daughters will find each other and know that I love them both more than life itself." Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. The reading should have been enough. The emotional climax had been reached. But Dr. Phil saw something in the sisters' faces, a hunger for more connection, a need to understand the full story. He closed the diary and looked directly at the camera. "We're going to take a break from the format here. I want Sarah and Claire to have time to read this diary together, privately, in our green room. This is their mother's voice, and they deserve to hear it without an audience." It was an unprecedented move. The show was live. Breaking away from the audience at the emotional peak violated every rule of television production. But Dr. Phil had never been one to follow rules when human need was on the line. He turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give these sisters some time. When we come back, we'll hear what they discovered." The production team scrambled during the break. This wasn't in the script. But Dr. Phil had made his decision, and his team trusted him. Backstage, in a quiet room away from cameras, Sarah and Claire sat side by side on a couch, the diary between them. They read in silence, turning pages carefully, stopping occasionally to cry or laugh or just hold hands. Margaret's words painted a picture of a young woman who had made an impossible choice. She wrote about keeping Claire, raising her alone in poverty, working 3 jobs to keep them fed. She wrote about the day she had to give Sarah up for adoption, how she screamed after they took the baby away, how she never stopped thinking about her. She wrote about the guilt that haunted her, that she had given Sarah away but kept Claire, as if loving one daughter meant abandoning the other. But she also wrote about hope. Pages and pages about the hope that someday, somehow, her daughters would find each other. But what happened next is something no one in the room saw coming. Claire turned to a page near the end of the diary. Her hand froze. "Sarah, look at this." It was a letter tucked between the pages. The envelope was addressed, "To my daughters, if they ever find each other." With shaking hands, Sarah opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter dated just 3 months before Margaret's death. "My dear Claire and Sarah, if you're reading this, then my greatest prayer has been answered. You've found each other. I want you to know that not a day went by that I didn't think of both of you. Claire, you were my strength. You kept me going when everything was falling apart. Sarah, you were my hope. I gave you up so you could have the life I couldn't give you, and I prayed every night that you were happy and loved. I made mistakes. I was young and scared and alone. But I never stopped being your mother. And now, even though I won't be there to see it, you have each other. You are sisters. You share my blood, my DNA, my love. Take care of each other. Love each other. And know that wherever I am, I'm finally at peace because you're together. With all my love. Mom." Both sisters were sobbing by the time they finished reading. But these weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of healing, of closure, of connection finally made. When the show came back, the transformation was visible. Sarah and Claire returned to the stage holding hands, their faces puffy from crying but also radiant with something that hadn't been there before, peace. Dr. Phil smiled at them. "How are you feeling?" "Complete," Sarah said simply. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." Claire squeezed her hand. "We have so much time to make up for. 50 years. But we have the rest of our lives to do it." Dr. Phil nodded. "That's exactly right. And I want to give you something that might help." He pulled out a business card. "I've arranged for you both to see a family therapist who specializes in adoption reunification. This moment is incredible, but the journey of building a relationship is going to take time and work. I want you to have support." He handed them another card. "And this is for a genetic counselor. You're going to want to understand your shared medical history, any hereditary conditions, that kind of thing. The practical details mattered as much as the emotional ones. Dr. Phil knew that lasting healing required structure, not just sentiment. The audience was captivated. Many were crying openly. Dr. Phil turned to address them directly. "I want everyone here and everyone watching at home to understand something. This story isn't just about adoption or reunion. It's about the fundamental human need to know where we come from. Identity isn't a luxury. It's a necessity." He turned back to the sisters. "Sarah, Claire, your mother gave you both an incredible gift. She gave Claire the gift of her presence, even when it was hard. And she gave Sarah the gift of opportunity by making an impossible sacrifice. And now she's giving you both the gift of each other." Claire spoke up, her voice stronger now. "I want to say something, Dr. Phil. To everyone watching, if you're adopted, if you've given a child up for adoption, if you're searching for family, don't give up. It took us 50 years, but we found each other. It's never too late." Sarah nodded. "And if you're afraid of what you might find, know that the truth, even when it's painful, is better than living with questions forever." Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Dr. Phil stood, signaling the end of the segment. But before he could wrap up, something unexpected happened. An elderly woman in the front row of the audience stood up. She was crying, her hand raised tentatively. "Dr. Phil, may I say something?" Dr. Phil nodded. "Of course." The woman's voice shook as she spoke. "My name is Patricia. 62 years ago, I gave my baby up for adoption. I've never told anyone. Not my husband, not my children. I've lived with that secret my whole life. But watching this today," her voice broke, "I realize I don't have to carry it alone anymore. I can find her. I can try." The audience erupted in supportive applause. Dr. Phil walked over to Patricia and gently took her hand. "Patricia, stay after the show. We're going to help you. If your daughter is out there and she wants to be found, we'll find her." It was moments like this that defined Dr. Phil's legacy, not the ratings, not the fame, but the human connections that rippled outward from his stage. As the show concluded, Dr. Phil stood center stage with the diary in his hand. The leather was worn, the pages yellowed, but the words inside had changed lives. "Family isn't just about DNA," Dr. Phil said to the camera. "It's about love, commitment, sacrifice, and sometimes, it's about having the courage to seek the truth even when you're terrified of what you'll find." Sarah and Claire, you honored your mother today by finding each other. And Margaret, wherever you are, your daughters are together. Your prayers were answered. The sisters embraced one more time as the audience stood in ovation. After the cameras stopped rolling, the real work began. Dr. Phil's team had already arranged for Sarah and Claire to stay in Los Angeles for a week. They would attend joint therapy sessions, meet with the genetic counselor, and spend time just being sisters, walking, talking, sharing meals, filling in 50 years of gaps. The diary would go home with them, a shared treasure that belonged to both of them equally. Dr. Phil checked in on them before they left the studio that evening. They were in the green room, looking through old photos that Claire had brought, pictures of their mother at different ages, pictures of Claire growing up, fragments of a life that Sarah had never known. "How are you two doing?" Dr. Phil asked. Claire smiled through fresh tears. I don't have words, Dr. Phil. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. Sarah stood and hugged him tightly. You gave me my family back. You gave me my sister. How do I thank you for that? Dr. Phil's voice was gentle. You live your lives fully. You love each other well. And you remember that your mother's greatest wish came true today. That's all the thanks I need. The impact of that episode extended far beyond the studio. Within 48 hours, the video had over 10 million views. Adoption agencies reported surges in search inquiries nationwide. The Sister Diary episode sparked a national conversation about adoption and identity rights. Patricia, the audience member who had stood up, found her daughter with Dr. Phil's help 3 months later. 1 year later, Sarah and Claire returned to the show. They had become inseparable. Sarah had moved closer to Claire. Their children had become close cousins. Sarah showed a silver bracelet Claire had given her. Sisters by blood, friends by choice, family forever. Dr. Phil smiled. You two are living proof that it's never too late to become the family you were meant to be. Margaret's diary was donated to the Smithsonian's Adoption History Collection. Sarah and Claire kept copies to read whenever they missed their mother. The envelope that changed everything was framed in Claire's home with a new photo inside, the sisters together, smiling. On the back, Claire had written, We found each other. Mom was right. Love always finds a way. And in the end, that's what mattered most. Not the television spectacle, not the viral video, not the national conversation, though all of those things had value. What mattered was that two women who had been strangers 12 months ago were now inseparable. That their children had gained cousins. That a family fractured by circumstance had been healed by truth. Dr. Phil had seen thousands of guests over his decades on television. But Sarah and Claire's story remained one of the most powerful reminders of why he kept doing it. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't just set you free. Sometimes it brings you home.